Well, hello there and welcome back for another video. This is Jennifer McGuire. So over the past few months, I've done a couple videos showing creative ways to use the Gina K Wreath Builder templates. These templates are great for creating unique cards very quickly and for getting new looks from your stamps. Well, I got some requests to do even more ideas, so I thought I'd share a third video. Now, most of today's cards actually don't even have like a wreath look to them, but rather are focal points on a card or just using the template to create unique backgrounds. So today is really about stretching these supplies. Now, if you haven't watched those other two videos, I will link to them here. I would watch them first as these build on those ideas. So on the right here, I have the Gina K Wreath Builder templates. These are two stencils that are sold together. And this is what I've used in all of those videos. On the left is the newest stamp set that Gina has released to go along with the Wreath Builders. This stamp set is called the Holiday Wreath Builder stamp set. Now, I will say you could use any small images you may already have, but the nice thing about this stamp set is they're all perfectly sized, and the sentiments are designed to go in the center of the wreath, so they fit in that circle nicely, and I really like the style of them. Now, I did create one kind of basic Wreath Builder card using this stamp set and the templates, and that's the card you see here. Now, I'm not going to show the process for this particular card because it's exactly like a card I did in my last Wreath Builder video, which I'll link to. It's just I changed the images to be holiday colors instead of like floral fall colors. I just wanted to quickly show you this example as a holiday card idea and to remind you that you can use these templates to create traditional wreath looks, although I'm not really doing that in today's video. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to some new ideas for today. I'll be using that Holiday Wreath Builder stamp set for this next card too. But instead of creating a wreath, I'm kind of creating a background from which I will cut a tree shape. Okay, so for the Wreath Builder stencils, you need to use a stamping tool. I'm using the MISTI stamping tool today, and I have taped my stencil into the bottom corner. This is the larger of the two stencils, and I'm putting a 4" by 4" piece of white cardstock in the center. I also have a die cut circle. This is where I plan to put my sentiment. So I want to plan everything kind of around it. So I've taken one of the little pine images from the Wreath Builder Holiday stamp set, and I've positioned it to overlap with that circle. That circle was just a guide for me. I'm stamping the image with the Gina K Jelly Bean Green ink, and I'm actually stamping it twice to make the color a little bit darker for my card. I then rotate it one position in my template and double stamp again. Then I'll rotate it another position and repeat the process. And I'll do this until I have a circle of little images at the center of my card. So you can see you could create a wreath this way, but I'm just using this template to make it really quick to create a repeating pattern for a background piece that I'll cut into a tree shape. Okay, so now it's time for our next image. When I place my images, I like to place them very close together. That's why I do one image at a time. If you want to save time, you could do multiple images and stamp them as you go around the Wreath Builder. But I find by doing one at a time, I can stamp them super close together and get a nice filled pattern. Okay, now it's time for my next image. Again, I'm going close together, even sometimes slightly overlapping. This time I am using the Gina K Grass Green ink, which is a little bit darker. And again, I'll double stamp that just to make it a little more intense. Now, if you want to do two images at once, you can, and I thought I'd show you here. It's usually easier to do two images at once you have a lot already down on your paper, so you can space the images out. In this case, I have a pine cone and a leaf that I've positioned into my MISTI, and I'm inking one up with green ink and one up with brown ink and stamping them both at the same time. So it does save a little bit of time, but I still have to ink them both in different colors. Okay, so I continued to do this until I filled up most of my paper. Again, this is a 4" by 4" piece. But you can kind of see how it does start out looking like a wreath. So now I'm going to draw a line down the center of the back of this piece. So this is right at 2 inches. This is going to help me to cut this into a perfect triangle to form the tree. So using my trimmer, I'm cutting from one corner to the end of that line, so right at that center point. And then I will turn it and do the same on the other side. I'm cutting from the end of that line at the center point to the other corner. And there we have a perfect triangle. And you have some leftover pieces that you could use on another card if you wanted to. At this point, I realized that the bottom two corners of the tree were a little empty, so I just quickly added a little flower to both. Now for the background of this card, I have a piece of Neenah Desert Storm, that's the craft cardstock there, and I'm using the Impression Obsession texture stamp to stamp onto the craft paper. This stamp just provides tiny little dots that create a textured look, and it's nice for adding something subtle to a background that's not too distracting. I'm using Gina K Connect glue to glue this background onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. I also decided to cut a piece of white craft foam to fit behind the tree. This will give nice even raised dimension. You could use foam tape, but I find craft foam holds up in the mail better. I'm again using my liquid adhesive to glue the foam to the back of the tree, and then this onto the center of our card. I also created a double bow from some twine, and I put a dot of adhesive at the top of the tree, and then I'll use my locking tweezers to hold the bow down as it dries. It doesn't take long to dry at all. For the sentiment, I changed my mind, decided not to use the circle die cut, and I'm instead using the Simon Says Stamp Grateful dies. I'm also using a little sentiment strip that I created using a sentiment from the Simon Says Stamp Big Thanks Words stamp set. I've used this many times in videos. So I'm gluing my stacked die cut to the center of the card, and I also created a little tree trunk using this scrap of Sunny Studio pattern paper. I like the wood grain, so I thought that would be perfect for the trunk. And I also created a little sentiment strip from the Big Thanks stamp set that I just showed you. I white heat embossed the greeting on red cardstock and added it with foam tape. So with this example, you can see how you can use the wreath builder to create a repetitive background. And in this case, I cut it into a tree shape for a different look. And by the way, I did add drops of gold Nuvo glitter drops to the center of the flowers just for a little bit of sparkle. Kind of felt like a holiday card needs that. Okay, now for a completely different look, again using the wreath builder templates, I'm creating a backdrop for some focal images. In this case, I use the wreath builder to create the leaves that are just a little backdrop for those flowers. These flowers are special because they have foiling. For this card, I used the Gina K Graphic Sunflower stamp set. Now this stamp set is great on its own, but there are also coordinating dies available and coordinating foil mates. What foil mates are sheets that are printed that you can foil. So by using these three together, you can stamp a flower, add foiling, and die cut it, which we'll do today. I've used these type of products before in a video and I'll link to it here. Okay, so there are different ways to go about creating these flowers. I went ahead and cut out the flowers that I wanted to use from the foil mates. I'll be using 2 flower centers and 1 of each size flower. And you can see how they match up with the stamp set. I also have Wild Dandelion and Sweet Mango foils from Gina K. These are thermal web foils that are great and just like the foils I've used in past videos. Okay, so I'm going ahead and cutting out with the coordinating dies the foil mate sheets. Remember, these are the printed sheets that you can foil. I'm using the negative space to help me do the stamping on these. So I pop the flower into the negative space, and I'm going to stamp onto this. Remember how the stamps coordinate? I'll stamp the first layer with Wild Dandelion and Sweet Corn ink. You could use just 1 ink, but I stamped the 2 on top of each other to get a new color. So now we have the stamping lined up on our foil mate. And I'll do the same for the smaller flower. Now you could have stamped and then die cut it, but honestly, I just did it in the wrong order, so that's why I'm using the negative space to help me kind of hold it there while I stamp on it. Now for the center of the flowers, I wanted to color them orange. However, if you drag an ink pad on it, sometimes it puts too much ink down. So I picked a circle image and I'm stamping with the back of it so that I get a solid image. So here I'm stamping with Sweet Mango ink, and you'll see how I made it a perfect orange color. So now I have my die cut foil mates with the stamping on it, but it's time to add the foil. Right now the lines are black. We're going to make those foiled, so I paused it here. Now I have a folded piece of parchment paper. This comes with the foil mates, so you don't need to find any on your own. I'm going to lay the foil down on this with the shiny, pretty side face up, put that in the folded parchment, and then run it through a laminator. You can use any laminator or Mink foiling machine here. I will link below to a laminator that I recommend from Royal Sovereign. This one that I'm showing here is old, and it was the only one I could find for the video. But any laminator will work to apply heat and pressure that will transfer the foil onto that black printing on the foil mate sheets. So there you can see the beautiful shine that we get. Okay, so now we can go ahead and assemble our little flowers and then add them to our card. And remember, if you want to learn more about these foil mates and foils, you can check out that other video linked here. Okay, so now it's time to create our leaf backdrop. I have a 5.5 by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock. It's bigger than my template, but I can still use it. I'll place one corner into the corner of the template and put an X there, just so I can always remember that that is my main corner. Now in the center of the template, I laid down my flower just to know where the center was, and I can plan where the leaf should be. So I picked one of the leaves to kind of overlap with the flower. I'll close my MISTI door on this to transfer the leaf stamp onto the door. I'll put my paper back in with that X corner right into the corner of the template. I can now stamp the leaves repeatedly. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this with key lime ink. This is a great kind of lime green. Really like this color. I'll stamp it, then I'll rotate one turn, each time putting that X corner into the nook or the corner of the template. This will create a wreath pattern off center on the background. But the reason I do this is that way my card can be off center. So I'll continue to stamp this, rotating each time. This last time you have to tuck the corner outside of the MISTI door, but that's okay. It will still work fine, and you'll end up with the perfect circle of leaves. Okay, so I want to do another leaf image overlapping. So I'm going to take my piece, put it right into that first corner, and put my next leaf down. Now this time I'll use a darker green ink. This will be Jelly Bean Green ink. This ink I really like to double stamp to make it a little bit darker, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So I'll again keep stamping this, rotating each time, making sure the X corner lines up with the template. I continued to stamp these leaves in the circle, and I did the same with a little pine image also. And I end up with this circle of leaves off center on the white piece. Now I can go ahead and trim this piece down, and I'll have that cluster of leaves that's the perfect backdrop for these two shiny flowers. Along this piece, I also wanted to have a strip of foil stripes. So I'm using these older Gina K Petite pattern papers. These are like the foil mates. They're printed with an ink that allows you to foil. So I'm going to cut a thin strip from the diagonal piece. I'll take this and put it in the parchment paper with a piece of gold foil on top. Again, you make the gold face up. Then I'll take the folded piece, run it through my laminator. It applies heat and pressure, and there we end up with a gold foil striped piece that I can put right alongside of our stamped piece. I glued these pieces onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card and also put a green strip on the edge. So you can see all the beautiful foiling there and how the circle of leaves that we created makes a perfect backdrop for those flowers that are the focal point. Now the sentiment says "You are golden." It's from the Simon Says Stamp Simple Sentiment stamp set that I use a lot in videos. And I thought the golden sentiment went nice with all the foiling. So there you can see how to use the wreath builder to create a backdrop or focal point for your stamping. Okay, my next card is very different. This time I'm using the Gina K Wreath Builder templates to create a frame to go around my focal point. In this case, I'm using small sentiments to form the frame. So I have my template in my MISTI, And I'm using a circle die as a guide for where to position my sentiments. I have a Hello Friend sentiment from that stamp set that I just showed you, and I cut the two words apart so I can put them next to each other. So I'm putting Hello and Friend down into my MISTI, then I will close the door onto the sentiment, and now we can go and do our stamping. I'm again starting with a 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock. Again, the reason I use this size is it allows me to create a wreath kind of in the corner that I can cut down to be off center on a card. So I'm stamping this with Hero Art's Soft Granite ink, which is my favorite light gray ink. Each time I position the corner with the X into the corner of the template and rotate each time. So once I've completed the sentiments, I can go ahead and add a little heart in between. There's a little too much space between the sentiments, so the heart seemed like the perfect way to kind of connect them together. So here I have a heart. This is from that same sentiment stamp set. I'll position it and stamp that with the gray ink. Now I wanted these hearts to be a little bit darker, so I double stamped them. Remember, double stamping is a great way to get what seems like new colors out of ink pads that you already have. Okay, so once I was done stamping my sentiment frame, I went ahead and trimmed it down to be 4 by 5.25. In the center of the frame, I stamped a flower image from the new Gina K Whimsical Wildflowers stamp set. These flowers are beautiful and great for coloring, and I also like the sentiment that says, "Keep going, keep growing." Okay, so I stamped the floral image with black amalgam ink. This is a Copic friendly ink. It's actually watercolor friendly, it's colored pencil friendly. It's a great all-around black ink that you can use for everything. I just did a video talking about this ink, and I'll link to it here in case you missed it. So I stamped that towards the center of our frame. Now you could color this however you want. I decided to use Copic markers. I'm not going to show all the coloring because it's nothing fancy, but I did list the colors there up on the top. But again, you could color with whatever method you feel most comfortable. For the sentiment, I decided to add a die cut hello. I used the Birch Press Hello Sugar script die that you see there on the left. I die cut this 4 times from Carta Silver Shimmer cardstock. It's a great soft silver that looks nice with that soft granite that we used on the frame. I'm using Gina K Connect glue to glue 3 of these hello die cuts together. I am often asked why I glue die cuts together, why I stack them. The reason is very simple. The added dimension helps them stand out against a busy background, and it just looks really nice. So I thought here I would show a comparison. Now on the top, I'll place our stacked die cut, 3 stacked together. On the bottom, we have just 1 single hello die cut. Now when I put these over the flowers, you'll see that the stacked die cut hello on the top stands out a bit more than the single layer. To me, it makes a big difference and is definitely worth the time. Okay, I also have gotten questions about that little blue glue stand that you see there on the top right. One of my blog readers sent me these, and she actually sells them on Etsy. I'll provide the link below. It's a great holder for any of your little glue bottles. It allows the glue to stay on the tip and ready to go. Okay, so here is the completed card. I added it onto a 4.25 by 5.5 inch blue note card. I also added a few pearls here and there from Lucy's cards. So with this example, you can see how you can use the Wreath Builder templates to create a frame on your card. Now my last example is completely different because on this one we're not actually using the Wreath Builder templates to do stamping, but instead I'm using the Wreath Builder templates to position die cuts in a perfect repeated circle. So see how those leaves are all perfectly placed? I use the Wreath Builder template for that. But first let's create the wreaths. I use the Gina K Thankful Leaves stamp set, coordinating dies, and foil mates, just like I did on the sunflower card earlier. You can see how this stamp set could be used by itself, but by using it with the foil mates, you end up with the opportunity to do the foiling on the outline that is really cool. So I cut out the different leaves that I wanted to use and decided to do the stamping this time before I did the die cutting. So I put my foil mate in my MISTI. I'm positioning the stamp right over it. I wanted a two-tone stamping. So instead of just using one ink, I'm taking 2 inks and applying the ink with a sponge dauber. This is Jelly Bean Green, and I'm applying that towards the center and bottom of the leaf. I then am using another sponge dauber with Honey Mustard ink from Gina K Designs and applying that to the top tips of the leaves. When I stamp this, I'll have the 2 colors blended together nicely, and it gives me that two-tone look. Very easy to do. I repeated this process, and I created 12 leaves in total, 4 each of 3 different designs, and then I die cut them. I'm now putting the leaves in the folded parchment and adding the foil on top and running it through my laminator. This will transfer the foil on all the black printing of the foil mates. So now I want to position these perfectly in a circular area on my card. But eyeballing them or measuring is really kind of a hassle to do. So here's what I decided to try today with the Wreath Builder template. I have a piece of 4" by 4" white cardstock in my template in my MISTI. Now I'm taking my first leaf and putting foam tape on the back and positioning wherever I'd like on my card, right up against the edge. I will then take the coordinating die and line it up with this die cut. I'll use a piece of masking tape on the edge of the die to create a hinge. Make sure your masking tape touches that template on the side. So now I can lift up this die on that little hinge, rotate my paper 2 turns, take another die cut the same kind, put foam tape on the back, position it behind this die, and press it onto the paper. This will make sure the position is in the same on the side. Flip my die back up, rotate 2 more turns, take another die cut with foam tape, position it behind the die, lay it down and press it onto my white cardstock piece. And then I can be sure all of these are in the same position on the 4 sides of the cardstock. So one more time, rotate 2 positions, foam tape on the back, line it up with the die, lay it down, and there we have our 4 pieces in place. So this little piece of tape I'm putting on this die is like a little hinge that allows the die to stay in the same position. Even when I flip it up, I can lay it back down in the same position. So now I'll do the same thing with another leaf die and shape leaf. Now this seems a little goofy, but to me, this was faster than trying to line those all up perfectly. I wanted kind of a perfect pattern of these leaves. You could instead draw pencil lines and do other things, but I thought since I had the Wreath Builder template that I would give this a try, and it worked out great. Now for the center of the card, I used a sentiment that is from this new Gina K Thankful and Blessed stamp set. These sentiments are incredible. I really like them, especially this Thankful and Blessed down here. I'll be using that one in a future video. But on this card, I decided to use the sentiment that says, "I'm so grateful to have you in my life." And I stamped that with black ink onto a die-cut white circle and added that to the center of my leaf wreath. I added all of this onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 green note card, of which I'll use a 4.5" white square envelope, which I'll link below. Here you can see all the beautiful shine from the foiling and how my leaves are perfectly arranged around the center. So you can even use the templates for things other than stamping. I hope this inspires you to find more ideas for your Wreath Builder templates, and maybe you learn some other tricks along the way. I have all of the supplies that I use linked below in that YouTube description. In the middle are the other 2 Wreath Builder videos I did. I appreciate you spending time with me. For more information, head over to my blog, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.